I read that he ran the third most routes in the NFL, but he had such a low target volume, like he just never got open.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks. I'm Jason, he's Vaz, and today we're going to round up the preseason as most of the preseason games are all complete now at the time that we are recording this. So we're going to go over the biggest stories that you need to factor in to the values of players going into the start of the NFL regular season. So Vaz, let's go over some of the news that has gone on over the last week. And I want to start with actually a trade of Jahan Dotson and a fifth to the Eagles for a third and two seventh round picks. This wasn't based on the preseason results from week 3, but it certainly is going to affect how people view Dotson and perhaps some of the other members of the Eagles and Commanders. So what is your assessment of this trade? Who wins and who loses, and by how much?
I mean, that's really tough to put together, but I think the biggest loser is Jahan Dotson. I mean, like if he can't carve out even the wide receiver 3 role there, like if he can't even beat out Diami Brown, like how good is he? So Jahan Dotson is a guy that I was pretty high on when he came out. You know, he was drafted 16th overall in the NFL draft. He flashed in his rookie season. Like he had quite a bit of production at the end of his first year, right? But then last season, I think he ran like I read that he ran the third most routes in the NFL, but he had such a low target volume, like he just never got open. So, and then he was outperformed in the preseason by Diami Brown, and then they drafted Luke McCaffrey, and if he can't beat out these guys, like I mean, how good is he really? So that's my takeaway. And then I guess the Eagles trade a third round pick for him. It might be based on the fact that they had rated him pretty highly on their draft board, perhaps when he was drafted, and they want a shot to get him in their building, right? But I mean, that's a pretty crowded depth chart as well with AJ Brown and other very
Smith.
talented Devonta Smith, yeah, and then good tight end Goddard. So it's going to be tough to earn targets with those guys as well. I guess he'll start out of the slot, but I still don't see how he's going to produce in that offense. So.
Would you take a third round pick for him now?
I think I would. Yeah, no, I definitely
Yeah.
would. I would take a third round pick and just like, wash my hands with it. I kind of as the Commanders have. I think it's probably a smart strategy at this point. I mean, like he's the wide receiver 3 at best on the depth chart, right? So yeah, I would go
Obviously,
ahead and
Terry
do it.
McLaurin's the biggest pass catcher in Washington. Perhaps you could say Eckler might be too, but who's the biggest beneficiary of maybe becoming relevant? Would you say Brown, or who else might we? Who should we be focusing more on that we haven't?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was able to grab Diami Brown off the waiver wire in like 5 of my leagues. So I'm hoping that that's the case, that he's kind of elevated himself into the wide receiver 2 role. It seems that way to me based on his
Mhm.
preseason usage.
Yeah.
But I think like the whole receiving core, should be elevated a little bit. I think like Benson Ott gets a big boost, right? Because he's a highly drafted player, and if he flashes, he could be earning himself a lot of targets now with the middle of the field wide open. Jahan Dotson was a slot player, so I think he's a huge beneficiary. I think if you have Sinon, you got to be happy about that. And then I mean, like other guys on the roster as well, like Luke McCaffrey and Terry McLaurin as well, because like I mean, there's less targets to go around now. So I think everybody's a beneficiary. I just think Dotson's the biggest loser. Yeah.
Okay. Bo Nix was named the starter before the week 3 games, and looking at how he's performed, it seems obvious. My question, because I think it's no question that Bo Nix's stock has gone up, right, during
Yeah.
the preseason. So my question would be, how much in terms of, because I think in this rookie class, he was probably seen as the quarterback 6, right? Maybe 5, but most likely 6. Does he, usurp anybody above him in this year's rookie quarterback class?
Yeah, I mean, if we're drafting right now, I think he probably gets drafted ahead of JJ McCarthy, I'd imagine, based off the injury, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then JJ McCarthy didn't look absolutely stellar in the preseason. He did okay, but not as good as Nick. So I think I wouldn't, my eyebrows would not be raised at all if Nick was drafted ahead of JJ McCarthy today. Would
Okay.
yours?
Yeah. How about Penix?
No, I mean like Penix was Nix was drafted ahead of Penix in almost all of my dynasty rookie drafts, just
Okay.
because we know we have to wait a few years for
Yeah.
Penix, right?
Yeah.
So I saw Pix as I saw Nix as the QB5 before he performed so well. But I think at this stage, yeah, I think he's probably risen to the QB4. I think ahead of JJ
Any
McCarthy.
chance that some people would consider taking him over Drake May? Or is that crazy?
I think
Considering
that's
how he's looked in preseason,
yeah,
May's received positive reviews too. So it's not like, May's on the decline
yeah.
like McCarthy's injury. But at the same time, I mean, it's clear that Nix is probably the biggest quarterback story riser in
Yeah.
the preseason.
No, I think taking him over May is pretty foolish. I think if he had a better team around him,
Okay.
then you could argue it. But I think it's just the preseason, so I don't want to buy into it too much. He has looked good, so if I own Bo Nix, I'm pleased about that. But no, I think it'd be foolish to go take him ahead of May.
Okay. The other big story from the final week of preseasons was Russell Wilson, not named the starting quarterback by Tomlin, but he played one series. And the gist of what Tomlin said after the game was, nope, I had seen enough and there was no reason to play him more. And it seems like, one series, get out of there, put in Fields and the other guys. It seems like Wilson is going to be the starter going into week one. Fair enough?
Yeah, I think no surprise there. I think that was always the Steelers' intentions, right? Like it was his job to lose, right? I think they probably assured him before they brought him in that he would be the week one starter.
Mm-hmm.
He had his as you said in the past, he had his pickings of NFL teams with how low his cost this year was in terms of salary, right? So I think yeah, he was basically assured. So I think he, as you said, he did enough on that one drive and then he was out of the game. So 100% he's going to be the week one starter. I am worried about that team. They don't have the weapons really, so I am worried if Russell Wilson can actually produce. I think their O line is pretty bad as well. I could see him taking a ton of sacks and then I expect them to go to Fields at some point, unless they win some games with their defense and running game. Then maybe Wilson could hang on to the job.
Okay, I wanted to read you a box score from one of the games in preseason week 3.
Yeah.
Quarterback, 33 completions in 49 attempts for 323 yards and a touchdown. Rushed 11 times for 90 yards and a touchdown. 5 interceptions. And two fumbles. And two
Holy
fumbles.
smokes! How did I miss that?
2 fumbles, 5 interceptions for Trey Lance, but he also
That was my guess too.
but he passed for 323 and rushed for 90, touchdown pass and touchdown rush. I think we talked before about how he seems to be number 3 in the depth chart. He played the entire game, no Cooper Rush playing at all. But at the same time, I mean, when you look at those numbers, do you get excited about the upside, or do you go, "Oh, I'm avoiding that,"
Oh
like the plague
no!
with the
Oh my
5
God! Five
interceptions?
interceptions in the preseason against second and third stringers? Hells no! No, this guy, no, no. If you
So
could get a
drop him,
fifth round pick
drop
for
him,
him, take it. Yeah,
drop
no,
him.
I don't think he has a future in the NFL. If he can't beat third stringers in the preseason and he throws 5 interceptions, no team is good. Listen, San Francisco used high draft capital on him, right? They saw him every week in practice, and they had no faith in him to start him in a regular season game. So they traded him away for nothing. Dallas now has seen that he's not good enough to even beat out Cooper Rush for the backup job. He can't win in the preseason. So yeah, no, he's a bust. 100% he's a bust.
Okay, another box score I wanted to read to you. 12, 12 completions out of 20, and then 114 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Also 10 carries for 93 yards, no touchdowns. But at the same time, 5 sacks for 29 yards and 2 fumbles again.
This has got to be Justin Fields, isn't it?
No, it's actually not. Fields didn't play that much. This
Okay.
is actually the guy who played against Justin Fields. Same game. You got the game right.
Anthony Richardson.
No, it was Hendon
Oh,
Hooker.
Hendon Hooker. Okay, okay.
Hendon Hooker. So he got a significant amount of play in there, but also an interception, 2 fumbles, but 90 yards rushing on
Yeah,
10
that's
attempts.
crazy.
Yeah, I think people have forgotten about Hooker because he basically redshirted last year, right?
Yeah.
but he could be a sneaky guy if he's available, and depending on how deep your rosters are. The question I was going to ask you is, so I just read you the numbers on Hendon Hooker. I just told you about Trey Lance. Do you like, would you take, if you had space on your roster for only one, would you take Hendon Hooker ahead of Trey Lance?
Oh yeah, without question. I mean, I have Hooker on some rosters, and
Oh,
I've dropped Trey Lance on others. So yeah, like it's not even a question for me. Like Hendon Hooker is going to be the backup there for a long time. Goff got signed, so I think he's clearly in the backup role. But they drafted him in the third round, and I liked his tape in college too. So and then like I would never expect he would rush for 90 yards. That's like a pleasant surprise. But
yeah.
I mean, like Lance just threw 5 interceptions. Like that's an easy one for me. Trey Lance for me. I mean, he can't even beat out Cooper Rush for the backup job. At least Hooker's a backup. So, if something happens to Goff, he's got some upside. But whereas if something happens to Dak Prescott, is Lance even going to be the backup to Cooper Rush, or are they going to bring somebody else in, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, one more thing that I wanted to bring up. Zay Jones got a 5-game suspension. I think a lot of people are down on him anyways. Does that even matter, or is this like a knockout punch for him?
No, I mean, I think he was probably fourth or fifth on the depth chart in Arizona, right? No,
Yeah.
I think he's already fantasy irrelevant. He just needs to be on your waiver wire. It's not a topic worth discussing.
Okay. Any other stories that you wanted to talk about from the final week of the preseason?
Okay, I just will mention a few things here. Number one, we finally saw Bryce Young for one series, and he looked phenomenal. 6 for 8 passing, 70 yards and a touchdown. So I mean, I don't think he had a drive like that all of last season. So that's very, very nice to see. He had a lot more time in the pocket. He showed a nice rapport with Deontay Johnson as well. So man, like that's if you own him, I think you have reason for optimism at this stage. Anthony Richardson really struggled. He played almost the entire first half in the third preseason game, and he looked okay on the first drive. Actually, like they just threw a lot of short passes. I mean, he was accurate in those short passes, but so he looked good on the first drive. But after that, his next four possessions, he looked pretty bad, and he threw a really ugly interception where he threw it like 2 yards behind a receiver for an easy pick six. So, I've been saying it all along that Anthony Richardson's price point in Dynasty is far too high because he still carries quite a bit of risk. I've seen him going at like the top end of round 2 in startups, like the 13th overall pick in one of my startups. And why are you using a pick that high on somebody that carries so much risk? I could never understand. So I still believe he carries a lot of risk. And then like, the preseason has made me worry even more. And then another couple things I'll mention here is Adonai Mitchell looked pretty good in this third preseason game. A guy that I liked his tape in college, and I thought he looks like he's going to be a starter there in that offense. And then they have other good players. Alec Pierce also looked good. I don't know if he's going to be a starter, but they also have Josh Downs. So they have a low volume passing offense. They've got a good running game, and then they've got kind of a question mark at QB with his arm talent. So I'm very worried about Michael Pittman. I would not even consider drafting Michael Pittman at his current range in drafts. So I think he's a horrible pick in redraft. And then finally, one more thing. I've thought that Carson Steele, the running back for Kansas City, he had a great game in the week 3 of the preseason. Absolutely needs to be rostered in any dynasty format at this stage. I think he's going to make the 53-man roster, and I think he's got a chance, to be the RB2 or RB3 on that depth chart. So, and possibly even handle some third down work. I think it's possible. So I think if you have a deep league, dynasty league, I think you need to add him if he's still in the waiver wire. And then Jermaine Burton looked good as well. So a guy I'm really high on. I think, next season he could be the wide receiver 2 there once T. Higgins leaves. I think you need to look to trade for him this season if you can.
Okay. There is our preseason wrap up. Best of luck in your fantasy drafts this upcoming season. Remember to like this video, share it with your friends, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And of course, if there's anything that you disagree with, or if you loved all the stuff we're talking about, leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts about what we talked about as well. Otherwise, we will see you next time on another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks.